Hey, it's 28 millimeter RPG here, Rick. Open your mind, Quaid. Open your mind. Today is Game Master Diary number 3. Or at least I think it's number 3. Um, Something about talking about games. Abe has a video. Very interesting one. And once again, we come back to a video I made a while back. It was about talking about playing games and not, describing an area and not knowing the layout of the area. Everybody has their own view. So many different views of what the area could look like if there isn't a map. Now, keep in mind, I'm talking about role-playing games that are played more like board games and not played necessarily as, in-character role-playing games. So Dungeons and Dragons, the way it is now with 5e or even like Pathfinder as well, tend to be more like a board game because you have your tactics in place. Everybody's got tactics. Your placement of your character affects how well you do, like flanking, that sort of stuff. And plus you got area of effects. So some things you can do, like a fireball, which would be a bad idea in certain respects. So you have those tactics involved. You want to know what area of effect that maybe some sort of a healing, aura or a bless or something like that would affect, who it would affect, all that stuff. It's very board gaming. So now I'm not against playing board games. I'm going to get probably a lot of flack here from people who don't know me or what I'm talking about, and might take issue with me saying, D&D is a board game, with the way it is now, 5e. Same with 4e. 4e is very board game as well. The thing is, it's okay to play those games as board games because they're built that way. It's just the way it is. If you want to get into role-playing games, now people will go, well, what do you mean by role? I mean, role is like a job. Well, that's about as much role-playing as a lot of these Dungeons and Dragons 5e games, or Pathfinder, second edition, tend to be more board gaming, and the role means class. So class playing, role playing, class playing. So you're playing a class, you're playing a fighter, and as a fighter you do X, Y, or Z. If you're a thief, rogue, you do X, Y, or Z. If you're a cleric, you do X, Y, or Z. And as a wizard, same thing, X, Y, or Z. You have different options that you're given to you, and a lot of people play that way, which is fine. That's the way they want to play. They want to play class play. It's their job, their class, whatever they're playing. Now, when we talk about role play here, with in respect with Shauner and talking about games and myself, role playing becomes being in character. So that's what that means. When you're saying something, you be in character. You don't have to use a voice. You can if you want to. I tend to use voices when I'm a game master. And one thing I notice is when I am in character as a role player, as a player myself, I rarely use a voice. So I rarely use like a, I am Johann Sebastian Krach and this is how I talk. Because if I'm doing that all the time, my throat is going to start, feeling constrained, and I don't want to be that player that hates doing the voice. I mean, sure, you can do voices if you want to. Like Fritz was talking. The one character friend of his was doing a character as a goblin, and he got a great voice. You could do that if you want to. But keep in mind that's the voice you're going to be using all the time if that's how you're going to be playing it. And if you're not used to using that voice, well, you're going to get tired. Your throat is going to get tired. You're just going to get tired of it. So, as a player, I don't tend to use a voice. However, like I say, as a game master, yeah, I tend to use a lot of voices, but it's because it's varied. I'm not always using the same voice. I tend to go with the more calmer voices for my throat when it comes to like the most, you know, um, the most present NPCs. So, say for instance, Valis. Valis is kind of almost like a Tommy Chong kind of, yeah, hey man, everything's cool kind of voice, and it doesn't really hurt my throat when I go ahead and use it. I'm not constraining myself. I'm not forcing a voice out. So that's cool, and I don't mind doing that. And other characters, will talk in different inflections and stuff, like the Dookuians, the alien, bio somethings. They talk in kind of a broken kind of English, and speak kind of cryptically. So it's fun to do that. It's not hard on my voice at all. So a lot of times I will use an inflection or a voice, imitate some sort of actor or something I've heard, and do that. And that's fine. Some dungeon masters, game masters don't even do that, and that's okay too. There's no hard set rule saying you got to do voice acting. So the thing is, a lot of games, and this is where talking about games, Abe was talking about different games, and he kind of hinted at this. There's different games out there, and some of them, and I kind of just put it out there, some of them are not meant for role playing, like Theater of the Mind. Theater of Mind role playing, all in one, not just role playing, but Theater of the Mind role playing. Some of them aren't meant for that. D&D 5e and Pathfinder. Well, Pathfinder a little less, because Pathfinder is it's a little less board gamey, but it is still pretty board gamey. Um, you know, they both are pretty board gamey, but you can get by if you ignore quite a few of the rules. If you kind of have, you're not playing with the board or anything. You're using your brains to imagine, the cave, the surfaces, all that stuff, and all the players are having their own, things going on in their head of what the color of the rock is, what the feel of the boards are on the door and stuff. That's up to them. Individually, it's the collective is. There is a door, and there is, a rocky surface around them. They can imagine what they want, the colors to be, and all that stuff. It's not important. Those aren't important things, but it's important to the individual thinking about it. And a lot of times they won't let out what they think the color of the stone is or what the feel of the wood is. They're just thinking it in their heads. And to them, that's their own private idea of what they are seeing. and they won't speak forth what it is, how they feel, what, all that stuff, because that, that would kind of break what the other players would feel as well. So, another player might be thinking smooth stone on the walls, and another player might be thinking rocky stone on the walls, if the game master hasn't expressed exactly how the texture is on the walls. If he just says rocky, it could mean many things. So keep that in mind. So theater of mind tends to go with rules, with game rules that are a lot more, what would be the word for it? It's on the tip of my head, but it wouldn't involve a lot of the mechanics that involve tactics. So if it's anything more than just the practical tactics, like the placement of party members in the lineup, you have the maybe two guys in the front, and then you've got like two guys in the back, and you got a few guys in the middle. At least you know rough tactics of what's going on. You don't need an actual board or a grid to place everybody on, because you can imagine it. It's fairly easy. If you are in the middle of the group and you see the two guys in front of you, who do you see? Well, you're gonna know it's Ralph the fighter and Jimmy the switchblade rogue, up front. And they will always present themselves as being up front because Jimmy's good at finding traps along the way, and his companion there, the fighter, is going to be bashing skulls if something comes along around the corner and threatens Jimmy. So that they find that's the best way for their tactics as the group go. It could be other tactics. It's entirely up to the group, but it's not any more than that. Because once you start getting into, okay, we got to move 5 feet and blah blah blah, and count how many squares you go, it starts. You're no longer going with theater of the mind. You're playing with a map, and therefore the rules pertain to the map and where you are placed, and what kind of advantages you get in such situations like flanking and stuff like that. Flanking can go on in a theater of the mind situation. That the monster is busy with Ralph the fighter. Jimmy is going to be able to flank in and to say that he's going to go ahead and go for a side flanking attack while the monster is busy on Ralph. Okay, advantage to Jimmy. Easy. Nothing hard you have to think about there. You don't even need to put it on a grid. So that's good, So when I started playing Traveler, I started with Snapshot. And if you haven't heard this story before, this is it. If you have, sorry, we're bringing it up because Snapshot is very board gamey. And Snapshot is pretty much chits on a board, and you're playing on basically on a deck plan. It could be either the Beowulf deck plan, or you could be playing on the Scout Ship deck plan. And the idea is, something's happening. There's a boarding party coming on board, so you try to beat off the attackers. Or it could be aliens are bursting from the cartons in the cargo bay, and you got to go eradicate them before they start multiplying or turning bigger. And maybe that's the game you're playing. And I am totally fine with playing board gamey kind of stuff. I mean, you've seen us play Deep Madness just last week, and that was a lot of fun. You, as an observer, may not have any feelings towards watching that and go, well, that's kind of boring to me or whatever, you know, like, but for us that were playing the game at the time, we were like experiencing like, wow, we're getting our asses kicked here, and what do we do? You know, we were like, you know, this is getting to be overwhelming. You're kind of getting into the gameplay and having fun with it. And though it's not theater of the mind, you're still, you're still having fun with it. So Snapshot, like I say, is board gaming, but it's still Traveler. And then I was also playing Striker. Striker is also Traveler. Striker's more tactical rules, more like BattleTech, more like group, like Battle Force, BattleTech, Battle Force, that sort of stuff. And then of course you have Traveler. Just Traveler was the role-playing game, so that was the one that you could definitely use a little bit more theater of the mind because the rules were a lot lighter, and each of them had different rules. So you could play a tactical, generals of war kind of game with Striker, but also they would work with the snapshot rules, which is more individual combat, which also worked with Traveler, which was more role-playing game, theater of the mind kind of stuff, or a lot of guys do just write stuff down and do the kind of spreadsheety kind of game play with that, keeping tabs on what they buy, what they sell, blah blah blah. I mean, there's many ways to play Traveler, and that was the nice thing about Traveler in its entirety, including Snapshot, Striker, all the games, Azante High Lightning, Imperium, the Fifth Frontier War, all that were different aspects of the same thing, the same genre, the same world, the same rules, but taken in different contexts. So, which was cool. So you find that some things are better played theater of the mind than others. So certainly, like I said, you can play 5e theater of the mind. You'd have to go ahead and forget a lot of the innuendo with the rule, with the mechanics. You'll have to let imagination take over in some respects. You you don't have to take tab of how far away you are. You kind of imagine, okay, I can't reach him because my sword won't reach overhead of the people in front of me, and I won't be able to hit the goblins in front. You can imagine that instead of having it tactically put on the board with a grid paper and your minis. So that's just fine. If you are hand waving a lot of stuff away, you can play it theater of the mind, no problem. And but a lot of people like those tactics, and a lot of people like to have that board gamey feel. So that's totally okay to them as well. But there are game systems out there that are way better to be using for theater of the mind, and some of them, like Traveler's okay for doing that. Just the Traveler role playing game. I'm not talking like maybe GURPS. GURPS might be a little bit more headier and involving a lot more rolling, because you want, if you want theater of the mind, you want to have less rolling, less unnecessary rolling. So a lot of times you will end up, like in my Traveler game, not rolling initiative. You've never seen my Traveler games. Well, they don't involve any rolling of initiative. It's expressed who's going first. If the person is acting right then and there and now, they get initiative. It's just the way it goes. If the enemy is coming down hard from the sky right now, well, then they have initiative. And you don't get to go until you realize, holy shit, we're under attack. So what's better for theater of the mind? Well, lately I've been finding a few games which, like, in the you could see this in the actual gameplay presentation, and that would be the Cipher System. Cipher System's really good for theater of the mind role playing. So if you watch any of the original Monty Cook videos with Monty Cook and Shauna and Bruce all playing, and they have a few other guests as well. You see them playing without a map, without minis, without any of that stuff. They just have their character sheets and their dice, and that's all they need. And even Monty doesn't even have a screen in front of him or anything like that. He's just playing out of his head. He's maybe he has a couple of sheets of paper in front of him. That's about it. That's all you need. The solo game with Spencer with just a sheet in front of me here, with some ideas just written down, and we had an hour and a bit of gameplay, which was just great. It was a fun ride that we went through. I mean, I was tired at the end because I'm using my brain in different ways than what I normally would. You kind of feel exhausted at the end, going, "Wow, that was just like, I need to just watch some YouTube videos instead, just to kind of switch off." Kind of that kind of feeling. So I find that if it has less die rolling mechanics for unnecessary things, the better. And you roll the dice whenever something is either, well, necessary, you need to make a judgment, or if something interesting is going to happen with the possibilities. Like Abe was talking about, with the idea of using the force spell in order to propel his character up into a direction in order to reach a high point on a wall or something. An ingenious way of using a spell, but granted, you could do a roll just to see if the character has the option. They could do the roll and see if they do it, or just not do it. But the nice thing is that roll will determine the success of it. So perhaps there is like an all-out success, and the trick goes off without a hitch. So you may put that down right. You put a tick to that idea and think, if he does that a few times where he's very successful at it, that could be just a routine trick that he does later on, kind of carrying off of the old Marvel face rip rules, where you would do stunts with other players or something like that, and you could do like the Wolverine and what was it, Colossus, or was it Beast, that did the fastball trick, where they would hurl Wolverine into a crowd and he would slice and dice everyone. After a while of doing the same thing over and over, it becomes a routine trick. So you could use that as part of the mechanics of your game too. So if you do something like that over and over again, you don't have to roll anymore, because it's kind of a thing that you can do instead of possibly fail. But at the same time, the interesting thing of a possible fail in there also leads to some interesting role play experiences, where maybe the other party members will have to intervene in order to save their friend from bouncing off and getting himself killed. All kinds of shenanigans can ensue from the result of the whole thing going backfiring, because the guy could break a leg or something, or it could be a partial success, or it could be a partial fail, and then they'd be like trying to hurry themselves to help their friend before he falls further into more of a threatening situation, or falling to his death or something. depending on what the situation is at hand, whether or not they're on a cliffside where that is a possibility where he would fall from a great height and hurt himself, or if it's just going to be like a 20-foot fall where it could be detrimental. People have died from falls that high, but quite often a lot of them are non-fatal. So just putting that out there, to kind of settle the waves, I guess, or cause disturbances. You can take it any way you want. I'm just saying there's some really good games out there for role-playing, which for theater of the mind role-playing. And then there's some that aren't so good with theater of the mind role-playing. So pick your game system wisely when you're doing so. You'll probably have an easier time with it with specific game mechanics, instead of picking the one that is so board gamey that you with all the tactics and everything. Go with the one that doesn't get so board gamey with the tactics. You'll find it easier to get into than, like I say, than the opposite there. So if you're going to try theater of the mind stuff, like I say, go with something fairly easy with mechanics and can be interpreted in many, broad spectrums. So that's my 5 cents for that whole thing. So, well, hope that 26 minutes was worth it somewhere. Talk to you guys later. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on Sunday, if not sooner, on somebody's stream or so. I never plan for anything. It just happens. So take care, guys.